One minute I was cruising down I-40, the next my life was a crime scene. 25 years I'd spent hauling freight across this blasted landscape, knowing every crack in the pavement, every shimmer of heat rising from the asphalt. I'm John Miller, 49, a man who believed in a day's work for a day's pay. That morning, though, the sun felt like a spotlight on my impending doom. My Peterbilt, a pristine white beast, was humming along, a perfectly legal delivery, that's what I thought. When the blue and red started flashing, not one, not two, but a whole goddamn convoy, sirens screaming like banshees, my heart went into overdrive. I hadn't done a thing, papers were perfect, I was clean as a whistle. But those cops, faces like thunderclouds, were closing in. They barked orders, weapons drawn, the whole 9 yards. I pulled over, hands up, and the world turned upside down. They tossed me onto the asphalt, burning hot against my cheek, questions spitting like bullets. "What's in the tank?" they roared. I stammered something about a delivery, about my innocence, but my words were lost in the whirlwind. They searched me, ripped apart my truck, their faces grim as they tested the cargo. One sniff, one glance between them, and my gut plummeted. My wife's smile, my daughter's face, they flashed before my eyes. That strong coffee I'd craved. Suddenly, a distant dream. The lead officer, a stone-faced brute, finally broke the silence. "Illegal substances," he growled, the words a death knell. Illegal. I just picked up the load, signed the forms, sealed the deal. Now this. The full weight of it hit me like a ton of bricks, a freight train derailing my life. Panic clawed at me, but I fought it back, my future hanging by a thread. A single, terrifying question mark under the merciless sun. My life's work, decades of sweat and grit, hung precariously in the balance, teetering on the edge of a precipice. The question gnawed at me, a relentless, throbbing headache. What the hell was in that truck? The truth, a seismic shift waiting to explode, was about to shatter my world. Dust coated my face, the sun beating down on the roadside as the officers conferred, their clipped words a confusing flurry. I didn't need to understand the specifics. Something was rotten to the core. A tall officer, his face etched with the harsh lines of years under the sun, his gaze icy, approached. He held a tiny vial, a shimmering yellow liquid catching the light. "Know what this is?" he asked, his voice flat. The vial held like a judge's gavel before my eyes. I swallowed, my throat parched, a helpless, "No, sir, no idea," barely a whisper. He studied me, an eternity condensed into a single piercing stare, as if trying to bore a confession from my soul. A subtle nod, and the others swarmed the tanker, opening valves, revealing a stench that wasn't the familiar gasoline tang. Something heavier, acrid, almost malevolent, a chemical assault on the air itself. My stomach lurched. I wanted to scream, protest, explain the colossal misunderstanding, but fear, a vice around my chest, choked the words. The officer returned. "Illegal fuel additive," he stated, the words blunt instruments. "Federal offense." The world tilted. "I swear I didn't know. I was just making a delivery," I stammered. The words pathetic, futile. My mind raced, desperately trying to piece together the seemingly innocent details. The fly-by-night company, the dispatcher's name, the paperwork. Signed in a rush. It had all seemed so normal. How had I landed in this nightmare? "Who hired you?" he asked, the leather of his notebook creaking under his pen. Panic threatened to drown me, but I fought back, offering the company name, address, the loading, time, each word a desperate attempt to salvage my reputation. He listened impassively, his pen scratching a relentless rhythm against the leather, my heart a frantic drum solo in my ears. Time stretched, each second an agonizing eternity. The highway patrol's scrutiny felt like a vice tightening around my chest. Every hushed word, every glance ratcheted up the pressure. Then a younger officer, a flicker of something, doubt maybe, in his eyes, whispered to his superior. A subtle shift in the older officer's demeanor. Not exactly leniency, but a crack in the stone wall of his suspicion. "Your story checks out," he conceded, his voice softening slightly. "Your paperwork's clean, and your route makes your involvement impossible." My legs threatened to buckle. Relief threatened to overwhelm me. But all I could manage was a shaky nod. This wasn't over, though. It was just the beginning of a long, grueling process. A formal statement, a full-blown company investigation. My life was now caught in a bureaucratic meat grinder. But a tiny spark ignited. Maybe, just maybe, I could clear my name. A younger officer, his face still untarnished by the harshness of the road, offered water. Shaking, I accepted. The cool liquid was a meager comfort in this suffocating nightmare. Sitting by the roadside, the relentless sun beating down, I felt utterly insignificant, a lone grain of sand in a monstrous machine. I clenched the plastic and bottle, clinging to the illusion of strength it offered. I wouldn't let this break me. My family awaited me, and as long as I had a voice, I would fight. The drive to the precinct was a blur of jarring potholes and searing metal against my wrists. Each bump felt like a hammer blow against my already fragile hope. The interrogation room was grim, peeling paint, the drone of a weary fan. Under the sickly yellow light, I poured out my story, each word a shard of my soul. The acrid smell of fuel that morning, the nervous new hire, details I'd previously dismissed now hammered at my memory. The detectives, unlike the highway patrol, were methodical, their questions surgical, dissecting my narrative for any hint of deception. Hours stretched into an eternity. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry insects, mirroring the relentless questioning that chipped away at my resolve. My throat was raw, my eyes burned. Exhaustion threatened to swallow me whole. Yet a stubborn ember of hope remained. I was innocent, and I would prove it. Then the lead detective, his gaze piercing, leaned in. "We're finding some inconsistencies at the company," he said, his tone grave. A ray of hope cut through the suffocating darkness. The truth, it seemed, was finally beginning to surface. The whole thing felt surreal. A slow-motion train wreck I'd somehow stumbled into. Months they'd spent chasing this ring of fuel thieves, using unsuspecting truckers like pawns in some elaborate game. Turns out, I was one of those pawns, unknowingly hauling tainted gas. My paperwork, a carefully crafted lie. The detective, a man etched with the weariness of countless cases, laid it out. I was a victim, sure, but my testimony could bring the whole crooked operation crashing down. Anger and disbelief warred inside me. How? How could this have happened? My gut churned with the injustice of it all. Signing those forms, statements, releases, authorizations, felt like admitting defeat, each signature a bitter pill swallowed. Down. Hours melted away under the harsh fluorescent lights of the precinct, the ticking clock a constant reminder of my suspended life. Finally, the word came, "You're clear." It felt anticlimactic, the release almost too easy, too easy. Stepping out into the muggy night air, the city lights a blurry halo against the vast, star-speckled sky. I felt adrift. My trusty Peterbilt, gleaming clean after its involuntary trip to the police impound, felt different. Something irreplaceable was missing. A naive faith in the world, maybe. The rumble of the engine as I pulled away was a comforting counterpoint to the turmoil within. The long, empty highway stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt unwinding into the darkness. Could I ever fully trust again? Would every fuel tank, every delivery slip trigger a fresh wave of unease? Probably not. But I had a road to travel, a life to rebuild, 1 mile at a time. I drove for hours, the night a vast, comforting blanket. Headlights blinked past like fleeting memories, the wind whispering tales of survival. At the first 24-hour diner, a beacon in the pre-dawn gloom, I pulled in. The familiar aroma of strong coffee, earthy, comforting, a promise of normalcy, pulled me inside. The tremor in my hand as I ordered a large black coffee was the only visible sign of the ordeal I'd just endured. Sitting at that worn wooden booth, the diner's familiar hum a grounding force, I began to let the weight of it all sink in, slowly, deliberately, one sip at a time. The coffee was a lifeline, that first scalding sip. Eyes closed, the world narrowed to the comforting warmth in my mug, a tiny, manageable haven against the chaos. Even with the gnawing fear, the simmering anger, the sheer unfairness of it all, I cracked a smile. Life's a tough gig, a brutal game of chance, but it throws you the occasional bone, a fleeting moment of peace where you remember who you are, what you're fighting for. That second sip, drawn out slowly, was a silent prayer of thanks for still being on the road, for a roof over my head for another shot at this crazy life. Because that's what we long-haul truckers are, right? Eternal wanderers, carving out our paths one dusty mile at a time. If this resonated, hit that subscribe button. Every mile is a story, a different chapter in this American saga. And if you're hooked, the next one's even wilder. Heck, want to join me for virtual coffee? Click that support button below. Each one's a roadside hug from a friend. Seriously, thanks a million. Godspeed. Texas baked me alive that afternoon. Sun beat, down like a vengeful deity, the AC wheezing its last breath. I pulled into a classic roadside diner, the kind that whispers stories, and devoured a mountain of greasy eggs and grits. The waitress, a solid woman with a heart as big as the Texas sky, listened as I spun yarns of lonely highways and breathtaking vistas. She understood, she got it. Life on the road isn't just miles, it's the people. That coffee refill, pure magic. Just a simple gesture, a shared moment of human connection, a brief oasis in the endless asphalt ocean. I paid, tipped big, and hit the road again, her kindness a warming ember against the gathering dusk. But the road, that fickle mistress, had one last surprise, a flat tire in the middle of nowhere.